Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
And also by the Toronto Yoga Show and Conference. At the Toronto Yoga Show, there are 300 exhibitors, 700 hours of world-class sessions. It runs April 2nd to the 5th of 2020 at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. I am going to be there for the whole weekend. It would be so fun to see you there and connect. I will be presenting with my good friend Amanda McKinney on the Friday night, and we're going to be talking about how to fill your yoga classes. Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I'm a mom of three, a yoga teacher, and a trainer and consultant who works for yoga teachers. This podcast was created for you so that you can connect to the information and ideas every single week and feel supported as you navigate these sometimes very tricky days as a yoga teacher and an entrepreneur. In today's episode, we're digging into something that is said to be as old as yoga itself, but it's also something less well known and not as widely practiced. Call to attention how I'm going to pronounce this today, and this is only because Kaya helped me. Yoga Nidra. I hope I'm saying that right, Kaya. I've been practicing Nidra, Nidra, Nidra. So try it. Kaya will walk us through on why the pronunciation is the way it is and how we can practice it. This is sometimes described as yogic sleep. Yoga Nidra can be a powerful healing technique. I've invited Kaya Mindlin to share with us more about Yoga Nidra in this interview today. Kaya and I explore questions like, what does Yoga Nidra do that other practices may not do? And why is it especially needed today? What are some myths and misunderstandings about Yoga Nidra? What kinds of things can come up for students during Yoga Nidra? And how can we as yoga teachers hold space for that? We also dive into the best positions, suitable music, and even what a good Yoga Nidra script should include. All of our show notes are ready for you over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/158. There you can find the links that we talk about, along with clickable timestamps in case you want to go back to a specific topic in this episode. Also, Connected Yoga Teachers, really exciting news. Kaya has offered a discount code on the Nectar of Nidra for us. So you can find that code in our show notes, or you can use Connected Yoga 20. Connected and yoga both have capitals on them, and then the number 20. So it's connected with a capital C, yoga with a capital Y, 20, no spaces, and that's the discount code that you can use if you want to take Kaya's course, Nectar of Nidra. That was super sweet of you, Kaya, to offer that to our Connected Yoga Teacher listeners. Alrighty, I have a thank you to share with two very special Connected Yoga Teacher listeners. Dominique and Amanda both left reviews for the podcast in iTunes. Thank you so much to both of you. These are also two fellow Canadians. Dominique, have we met in person? I don't think we have. And I was just about to say that we have, because that's what it feels like. Okay, so we're online friends, all of us. And Dominique says, Shannon was my first introduction not only to the marketing world of yoga, but also my journey into being a pelvic health expert. I have been a listener from day one. Sometimes I will see the subject of an episode and think, blah, this isn't for me. Thank you so much for your honesty here, Dominique. I get it. And then I listen and realize how much I needed to listen to that episode. Every episode has wisdom for a variety of yoga teachers, whether new or seasoned. Give it a listen. Don't shy away when you think an episode may not be for you. You will be surprised. On top of that, Shannon has a beautiful, soothing voice that feels supportive, and you can feel her excitement for your accomplishments. Her entire community is a wonderful space for all yoga teachers. Thank you. Dominique, yoga teacher, personal trainer, pelvic health expert. Dominique, it is a pleasure to read this review, and I'm so excited that, one, I think that we're personal friends who have met in person, and two, that maybe we will get to meet each other in person at the Toronto Yoga Show. I think you might be able to come and meet up. That'll be super fun. No pressure, though. The other review is from Amanda Whiting, who we had on the podcast. She did a fantastic episode about anxiety also a fellow Canadian. Amanda says, I love not only that Shannon has diverse guests, but also that she's Canadian. Sometimes to get the Canadian flair of things is an added bonus. I've learned a ton through the podcast and recommend them to every yoga teacher I know. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being a guest on our podcast, also for this review. I look forward to maybe someday also meeting you in person. Connected yoga teachers, I love to read these reviews because I know what it feels like when I'm a podcast listener and a podcast host gives a shout out to me. It means a lot when you leave a review, and I do like to try and acknowledge that in each and every episode. Something else I want to acknowledge is the support of Schedulicity. This is a software that I have been using since 2011. I truly love it for keeping my schedule very organized, for showing me at a very quick glance of how much money I'll be making that week from the calls that I'm doing or the yoga classes that I'm booking. It is an amazing company, an amazing software, and let's hear our hot tip of the week from the team over there at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga Teachers. This is Michaela with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Schedulicity is an amazing accounting tool. Your dashboard shows your weekly estimated revenue, the number of bookings you have, and the average revenue per booking. Enabling the payment add-on makes things even easier. Once you're connected to Stripe or Square, all your transactions will be listed on your payment screen, and you can select a date range, search by tender type or confirmation number, and export that information to an Excel document. With your schedule and your money this organized, you might have time to tackle something even tougher, like that weird junk drawer or your kid's closet.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity. Now let's dive in and meet Kaya. Kaya Mindlin is a yoga therapist and Ayurvedic practitioner with 18 years of experience teaching yoga and 9 years of experience training and mentoring yoga teachers. She's the co-founder and director of Emeryville Yoga Therapy Center and has created multiple programs for yoga teachers, including Agni and Soma, the Nectar of Nidra, the Essential Gita, and more. Kaya is someone who I first started following on Instagram. I really loved, and I have to admit, and I tell her in today's interview, that I was a bit intimidated by the pronunciation of yoga. I didn't want to appear like I would look silly if I didn't know how to say a yoga word. And so it took a bit of bravery for me to interview her. As I got to know her a little bit more, that all melted away. Kaya has a super warm heart and she just wants to help yoga teachers. So I am excited that you get to know her today. She's passionate about the soft, slow, inward-oriented side of yoga that holds the purpose of yoga at its heart. Today, Kaya teaches yoga teachers in person and online through training courses, mentoring, and private sessions in yoga therapy and Ayurveda. So let's learn more about yoga Nidra from Kaya. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher Podcast, Kaya. It's great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Shannon. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I am really excited that we get to talk about Yoga Nidra. Correct me if I'm saying anything wrong because I know you're really good at pronunciation. But before we get there, I'd love to hear, where did you start doing yoga? How did that begin?
I actually started at university. I was in a liberal arts college and we had a religion requirement. So I started taking Eastern religion and philosophy courses. And then it turned out that the philosophy teacher of those courses actually had a guru. And in one of our classes, he was teaching us how to meditate. And I had a dance and athletic background at that time. I was doing some of those things. And so when I found out that there was this thing called asana, where you use your body, but it's connected to these teachings, I went and tried it out. And I took my first class in a gym and I loved it right away. And I just started I was doing the Rodney Yee videos. Remember those at home?
Yes, I do.
And then I was taking every yoga class I could get to, sometimes 3 yoga classes a day. I mean, I was like a college student in the summer, so I had time. And so then I pretty quickly figured out that I wanted to teach it. And I just investigated yoga training programs until I found something that seemed as in-depth as possible. And that was the start.
Oh, that's amazing. It's interesting hearing that your first class was in a gym, because I feel like gym yoga is far from what you teach.
It's totally far from what I teach. Although I think gym yoga then was much milder than gym yoga is now. If I can remember what it was, so I was about 21 years old. It was what people now would refer to as kind of general hatha. Like, it was not extreme in any way. And it wasn't really a workout form of yoga, but it still was much more workouty than what I do now.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I love also that it was part of your education too, that's where you started to find it.
Yeah. And that I think it makes sense that I started with philosophy, and that the yoga philosophy is such a big part, a fundamental part of what I do, and a main part of, main thing that I teach. It was my first home with yoga, and it's always been the strongest thread. And now I've come to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get out there and teach it more.
Right. So what then led you to really focus in on, do you think your specialty now is yoga nidra?
It's something that I teach a lot. It's part of the package of what I do, and it conveys in a very clear and simple and accessible way the heart of my teaching, which is what I lately refer to as the softer side of yoga and the more inward oriented approach to yoga. So I can make that clear more as we talk more about yoga nidra, but it's very much an easy way in, an accessible way into this softer, more nourishing, nurturing approach to yoga that's just about, discovering the inner self-satisfied self rather than working to achieve something.
Right. Oh, that's making me just think of the many times where I was working to achieve something.
Right. I mean, we have that as that's our general cultural problem. And then we bring it into our yoga so much of the time.
Mm-hmm. So forgive me for here's my understanding. Well, first of all, until I started following you on Instagram, I'm sure I called it yoga nidra.
Sure.
And so do you want to explain, is there anything you want to talk about first with the pronunciation? Is it saying tomato? Can we chalk it up to that, or no?
No, it's different. So in Sanskrit, there are not accents. There's not options of how to pronounce something. It's a highly specific language where every sound in the alphabet, of which there are about 50 sounds, it's always precisely pronounced in the exact same way. So you don't have pronunciation options or accents. But there are regional languages in India that came out of Sanskrit. So there's, Hindi pronunciation, for example, and Tamil pronunciation of words that may be derived from Sanskrit. Then you'll get different accents. But if you're using Sanskrit, there's only one way to pronounce the words. So yoga is pretty easy. Everybody gets that right, luckily. I haven't heard anyone mispronounce yoga. And then nidra.
Nidra.
Yeah, so the I sound is it's a short I, just eh. And then the A at the end is it's long, drawn out. It's a double tempo. So nidra.
Wow. The reason why I bring this up is because sometimes when I follow your Instagram, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so intimidated. I think I mispronounce a lot of things with Sanskrit.
Right. And that's one thing that I sort of shudder when I hear, because my intention is never to shame anybody or make them feel afraid to say words, but it is to honor the language that, yoga is codified in. And it's also my way of giving people a means of knowing when somebody knows what they're talking about. So for example, if you mispronounce something, but it's not what you're claiming to be your area of expertise, that's just innocent mispronunciation. You heard it wrong or you heard it right, but it's hard to hear, some people have a harder time hearing language. But what I want to point people to is if somebody is selling a book about chakras or selling programs about chakras and calling them chakras, that's a little red flag to me. Like, does this person have expertise in this thing if they don't know how to pronounce it, which it's a pretty basic pronunciation? That's part of my reasoning.
Well, it's super helpful. You don't shame people. You make it quite fun and light. You're like, you share what you often hear in the yoga world, and then you share the pronunciation of it. So I think it's very accessible, and it has caught my attention, obviously, enough that even when we're doing this interview, that's what I'm asking about, even though we need to be talking about yoga nidra. So with that, my only experience of yoga nidra is in maybe one or two classes, and I just felt like it was a really great shavasana with someone guiding me through something. So can you define what it really is?
Sure. What yoga nidra is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yoga nidra is a state, right? And we use it, and even I use it more casually to refer to like a practice or a technique. So when you say you did yoga nidra, like maybe you went to a class that was called yoga nidra, or where they said, now we're going to do yoga nidra. Technically, yoga nidra is an inner state, and there's no guarantee if someone uses a particular technology to get you there. We can't guarantee that you're going to experience that state. So the state is, simply put, it is the deep sleep state. So physiologically, it's the deep sleep state in terms of the brain waves and so on. And then it's that deep sleep state with awareness retained. So we all experience deep sleep. Hopefully we go to sleep at night. We experience dream sleep. We experience deep sleep, and the physiology goes back and forth between the two. But when you're in the deep sleep state, you're there, but you don't know you're there. Right?
Right.
Right. So in yoga nidra, you're there and you're aware of it while you're there.
So what happens when we go to, that's our intention, but we fall asleep?
So if you fall asleep during yoga nidra, you get all of the many wonderful physiological and psychological benefits of sleep.
Right.
So that's good. So what I say when I train teachers in yoga nidra is that, first of all, I train them in techniques to open the doorway to that state, but there's no guarantee that it will happen. But whatever happens will be beneficial.
Okay.
Right.
I love this wording, opening the doorway to that state. And you sent me a audio clip, and I'm super excited to try it more in depth. I was listening to it, as I said, before we started this interview, and I felt like I was going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that it opens the doorway. What I'm curious about now is, how do we know if we've reached that state?
Right. You don't always know. And a teacher can sometimes know based on if the student describes what happened, if a teacher's trained in the technology of what is yoga nidra. So here's a little bit more about what is the deep sleep state and awareness retained. Because it is hard to describe something that we all experience, but we're not there for it, essentially.
Right.
So the deep sleep state is like you are in a dark closet, right? Like, let's say you go into a closet and the walls are painted black and there's no windows and the light is out, and you go into that closet and your eyes are closed. So you're experiencing nothing and your eyes are closed. So you don't know that you're experiencing nothing. Okay. The yoga nidra state is that you go into that dark closet and your eyes are open. So it is hard to differentiate because either way you see nothing.
Okay, because the closet's dark. Okay, that's the analogy of the dark closet. Okay.
Yeah, what's so amazing right now is that there's all these modern scientific studies being done on sleep, which are essentially confirming what has been stated in yogic and Ayurvedic texts for thousands of years about the deep sleep state and about the dreaming state. It's really interesting. But one of the descriptions of the deep sleep state in the yoga tradition is it's described as a mass of ignorance because there's nothing there. When we know nothing, we call that ignorance, right? So it's a mass of ignorance and it's a mass of bliss,
Right.
a mass of ananda, because when we're in our normal waking life or even in our dreaming life, we're getting all of this information, sensory information or inner information from, our mind's experiences in the case of dreaming and waking. So all of that information is disturbing us. Some of it makes us happy. Some of us makes us, grieve or feel stressed. We're having every possible emotional and physiological experience in our waking and dreaming hours. But in the deep sleep state, we're experiencing nothing. And so there's nothing to make us feel bad. We feel only ignorance, and simultaneously that ignorance is described as a mass of bliss. And even when we sleep and we wake up and say we got like a lot of really good deep sleep at night, you wake up and you say, I slept so deeply and it was so good.
Right.
Right? It was blissful, even though you weren't really consciously there for it.
Right.
So with the yoga nidra state, it was so blissful and there's nothing there, but you know it.
Can this happen, like, say, if we lay down for Shavasana, or could it happen in a meditation or even when we're moving around? Or is there a specific place that we're at when this happens?
For yoga nidra to technically happen, your body has to be able to be in a fully relaxed position. So, if you went into meditation and you were dropping into yoga nidra, you'd probably fall over.
Okay.
But there are different brainwaves described and different states described. So you could go into very deep relaxation, or you could have like what's described as a peak experience or a reverie state. Those things could happen in meditation or in your waking hours, but you have to be the body has to let go completely in the way that happens like in deep sleep. You couldn't fall into deep sleep state, remember? If you were
Right.
driving or shopping or meditating, you'd fall over.
Right.
So the prime, like the first base of yoga nidra is total relaxation of the body. That's part of the doorway in. And then other techniques are used beyond that.
Okay. And so why is this so important? Like, why are people drawn to try yoga nidra? They love it. I really liked the experience when I was in that class. What is it that we're needing from that?
I mean, I think I think we're drawn to rest, and it's giving us permission to rest, because it's almost like, especially in our culture and those of us that have the personality type to, be achievers and workers and striving and strategizing, it's like better than a nap. I mean, it technically is better than a nap. It's better for you even than a nap. It's deeper, but also a nap feels like you're, stealing part of your day, or you're not doing something official. Whereas doing yoga nidra, it's like, oh, it's a class. It's almost like you're accomplishing yoga nidra instead of taking a nap. But I think at a deep level, it's very appealing to us because we are starved for rest and relaxation, and we're really starved for sleep in our culture right now. I think it's the studies have shown that in all kind of modern cultures, we have lost 20% of what our biological sleep need is. We sleep 20% less than how much we're supposed to sleep. So we're really very sleep deprived as a culture. And we're also very depleted in many other ways besides the fact that we're lacking sleep. So I think people are drawn to yoga nidra mainly because it's permission to rest and relax. What most people don't know, though, is how much more is possible from the yoga nidra state besides just like a really fancy nap.
Yeah, I would be one of those people. Do you have some of the other, like, what other benefits would we experience?
Yeah, there are so many benefits to the yoga nidra state. Um, but of course, as I said, even if you're just relaxing, let's say you just relax the body, of course, that's very beneficial, right? Who doesn't benefit from full relaxation of the body or peaceful mind? If you experience even, 3 minutes of a resting, peaceful mind, that's hugely beneficial.
Right.
So all of those benefits of rest, or even if you go into a reverie state or a dream state, there are tons of psychological benefits to all of that, which we can talk about. And same with deep sleep. There's tons of physiological and psychological benefits to that state, which we could talk about. But yoga nidra, the benefit of that is, I can list some for you. It's more revitalizing than a nap because of the effect of awareness being retained in that state. There's more revitalization. There is an increase of prana and joyfulness. There is a potential to resolve actually all physical tension far beyond what you would get just from being in a relaxed position. And the reason for that is if yoga nidra is done in a traditional way where you actually introduce what's called a sankalpa, or you may have heard people refer it to it as your heart's deepest desire. If we introduce a sankalpa or a contemplation into yoga nidra, there's a potential there to actually resolve problematic patterns at the unconscious level.
Oh, now you're really making me think of this. I went to a workshop with a hypnotherapist, and she was drawing out how the brain works and like why we get so stuck in like basically up until the age of 8 or something. We have positive and negative things in our brain. We just lump them into that's positive, that's negative, and they stay there. And we really can't get at them until the subconscious. So is this the same brain?
Yes. This is getting at, so you may have heard the Sanskrit term vasana, and these are basically mental impressions from everything that we've experienced that kind of stay with us. And that's, in English, we can call that the subconscious, right? So yoga nidra works at the subconscious level to resolve problematic patterns and thinking and habits at the subconscious level, but then it also goes all the way to the unconscious level. And the unconscious mind is what's actually driving the subconscious. So it's the patterns behind the patterns that, why is it that I always react to this thing with anger, or to this thing with jealousy, or to this thing with fear? What is behind those patterns of reaction that are subconscious? That's the unconscious mind. And I think the studies are something like up to age 7-ish, like you said, age 8. We're laying down a lot of patterns that basically stay with us for life. And so, yes, yoga nidra and other yogic techniques, but yoga nidra is a very primary technique for working at that unconscious level, that it's actually possible to resolve the patterns behind the patterns, the stuff that we're not aware of that's driving all of the reactions that we're having at the conscious level.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty powerful stuff.
It's very powerful. And in that sense, I mean, for someone to lead yoga nidra or even just shavasana, it's a huge responsibility in a sense, because you are opening a doorway for people to go into that level that's very deep, very private, very unknown, very scary. Very, it's housing. We could even say karma from past lives, if we believe in that, from the yogic perspective. So it's a very powerful but vulnerable place. And so, to take people there is a responsibility and really an honor to do when we get to do that.
What I'm thinking about now is maybe this is why we see students have, all of a sudden we'll notice that a student is crying. I mean, they might even be taken aback by it if they're pretty new to yoga, or they've never had that kind of a release, or they'll come up at the end of class and say, oh my gosh, this was my experience. Is this normal? So what are some of the things that we might experience in this state of yoga nidra?
Yeah. So, and it's amazing what unfolds for people in a really good, yoga class, and sometimes it's not the yoga nidra state or shavasana. It could be just because when we're mapping things in the physical body, we're also mapping things at the psychological level. If you think about the kosha model, for example, we're mapping, the mind and the intellect and the psychology and the feelings and all of that every time we're working with the body. For better or worse, we're mapping those things. But in shavasana, and yoga nidra specifically, if they're all the way in the deep sleep state, then when they're in it, there won't necessarily be any reaction because they're in the deep sleep state, right? But afterwards, or as they move out of it, or as they drop into it in those in-between places, or when they come conscious again, we could see all kinds of emotional outbursts, like hysterical laughing, or hysterical crying, like sobbing the way that, we all did when we were toddlers, or just, a single tear, or a very strong, powerful memory can reveal itself, something from childhood. Or some people are attuned to past lives. Some people can have past life memory. Sometimes what can happen are subtle pranic movements of the body, what are called kriyas, where the body is kind of moving without them consciously moving it. And this can be the movement of prana, or even the movement of what's known as kundalini shakti. And if they've never experienced that before, it can be a little bit scary. Or if the teacher's never seen it before and they see the person's, head is turning side to side, or their body looks like it's rippling like a wave, these things can happen as a result of the resolution process in the yoga nidra state. These are things that I work with teachers to know how to handle, because again, it's a big responsibility to help people go into that place. And so almost anything can happen because we're dealing with the unconscious. So we kind of have to be ready for anything. But in most cases, I would say mostly what happens is people have a very relaxed, blissful experience, and they feel great. And sometimes they feel more tired afterwards. And sometimes they feel a burst of energy afterwards. And it kind of depends on how exhausted they are when they come into it. What layer, sometimes we are releasing layers of deep exhaustion that are there, because many of us are functioning, but we're very exhausted.
Right.
And so sometimes people come out of shavasana like, oh my gosh, now I need a nap, or I feel like I can't function. And sometimes people come out of it like, wow, I feel a burst of energy, like I could do anything right now.
Right.
So
Sounds like it's so individual. And you said the words big responsibility, and that's what it sounds like. For sure. It sounds like a huge responsibility. And it's a big responsibility to invite people in to do yoga in general.
Mm-hmm. Completely.
So I'm wondering, if yoga teachers haven't experienced it, where would you suggest that they try it out? If they can't find, because we can't always find someone who offers it in our small towns. I'm thinking of my small town here. And how do we even know if, like I said, I went to a class. I think the teacher printed a script off the internet and said, let's try this thing.
Right. Yeah, of course. You don't know. It's like same with a yoga class or a massage. You kind of don't know unless you get a good referral from someone you trust, whether it's going to be good. And unless I personally take the time to investigate people's background and their bio before I would do something with them. But these days, there's also a ton online. There's so many apps with meditations and relaxations, and then you can just give them a try. Like, I have some that are available where you can just do it at home. And I even talk about what to do with your body, and you just listen to a recording and let it happen. What's interesting is, you also, if you're listening to this interview, you can't go into yoga nidra then hoping for the yoga nidra state, because of course that's antithetical to the whole process. It's really all about surrender and letting go. And so if you're lying there hoping for something to happen, then you're not letting go and surrendering. So having heard this, then you go, okay, whatever happens in yoga in a yoga nidra technique or in shavasana, or maybe you're in a chair or whatever happens when I relax is going to be beneficial, and maybe it will be yoga nidra and maybe it won't.
Because all of a sudden you're like, I'm there. Oh, darn it.
Right.
So you have some available online. Where can we find those?
I think if people go to my website, yogawithkaya.com, on the homepage, they can put their email in and they get 3 recordings of 3 different Yoga Nidra scripts that they can access and listen to anytime they want. And then students in my online training in Yoga Nidra, as part of that training, it's 6 weeks long, and each week they get a different Yoga Nidra to practice at home for the week, because of course we don't want people teaching something that they haven't themselves experienced.
Right. And so then you also teach you teach online and in person, is that right?
I do. I've started teaching Shavasana and Yoga Nidra, what is Yoga Nidra and how to lead it and how to write even your own script. I started teaching that about 7 years ago in person. And then during those programs, I would actually survey the teachers about their background. Often I was teaching teachers with about 500 hours of training already. So this was continuing ed and yoga therapy training, sometimes 200. So 2, 3, and 500-hour level teachers. And I would do these full day immersions, about 8 hours into Shavasana and Yoga Nidra. And I would ask them, how many of you lead Shavasana in your classes? And as you can imagine, 99.9% of them, it was a yes. I lead Shavasana. And then I would ask, how many of you got training in what to do with people's bodies in Shavasana besides just lay down?
Right.
And I would say it would be about 30% of them would have had training in what to do with people's bodies, which is pretty surprising to me because they spend so much time on other asanas. And Shavasana is considered the king asana, right?
Right.
But there's very little attention given to it. And then I would ask them, how many of you had training in what to do and what to say once they're in Shavasana? And less than 20% of them, when I would survey these groups, would have any training in what to do, what to say. Do I do a contemplation? If so, when and what? Do I guide them? And if so, what do I say and how? And so I thought that was so interesting that all of them were leading Shavasana and so few of them had any training in how to do it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, you're right. You're right. There was so much focus on the alignment of every other asana. And then it was just like, lie down, get a blanket, maybe an eye pillow.
Right. Lie down. Because we think, well, we all sleep at night. We all know how to lie down. There's no technology to that, but there is a technology to it if we are preparing for something deeper to happen besides just recovering, which is how a lot of Shavasana is done in modern yoga. It's like yoga is a workout, and then in Shavasana is your recovery. Or maybe yoga is something deeper than a workout, and Shavasana is like a marination or a resting relaxation, which is good, but we're missing this huge thing. So when I saw those numbers again and again with these groups, and then one of my students kept pressuring me to offer it online, I created in 2017, it's a 6 weeks, so 7 weeks, because they get a 1 week of prep materials. It's 6 weeks online training in Yoga Nidra, but we do what I call full spectrum. So we actually start by diving into sleep. And what is sleep? What happens when we lack sleep? What is dreaming? And we look at the science of sleep and the benefits of sleep, the risks of not sleeping, all of that from the scientific perspective. And then we use Ayurveda. What does Ayurveda say about sleep? And what are the Ayurvedic means of assessing sleep? Like why different people have different kinds of sleep problems? And then how can we remedy them with Ayurveda? So we spend actually a full week just on that before we even get to Yoga Nidra.
That makes a lot of sense, really, because if people are lacking sleep, they're never going to reach that state.
That's exactly right. Exactly. And it also then helps us have an understanding of how beneficial just the physiological and psychological benefits of rest and dreaming and taking a nap in Shavasana. If that's all that happens, we really know that's hugely beneficial. And yeah, I have this amazing story actually of someone who's been studying with me for a bunch of years, and she's taken the online course like 2 or 3 times with me. She's a yoga therapist and a nutritionist, and she had a client who wanted to lose weight. And they had done everything nutritionally. They'd been doing tons of yoga therapy, and he wasn't losing any weight, which was his goal. And finally, after a few months of working together, she inquired about his sleep. And then he was like, oh yeah, I go to sleep at 1 a.m. and I sleep until 10, which is not uncommon.
Right.
And so all they did was work on his sleep. And he started losing weight within a month.
It makes total sense. It really does.
Yeah. So I kind of think I'm not just training yoga nidra teachers. I'm actually training a bunch of people to be like, I don't want to say sleep warrior, but I kind of do. They're like sleep service people because it's such a deficit in our culture. And, people, if you look at all the problems that are associated with lack of sleep, people throw so much money and energy at trying to fix all those problems: high blood pressure, infertility, anxiety, depression, inability to learn, productively, so many issues associated with not sleeping. And they spend a lot of money on pills or techniques or programs to fix those things instead of actually working on sleep. So we can really, yoga teachers who study this kind of thing can really interface with people in a hugely healing way.
Oh, that's amazing. I know a few yoga teachers who are specializing in sleep, and it's been a big, big deal. Like they are running sessions and focusing or pairing sometimes with a naturopath or someone else who kind of really specializes in sleep. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Mhm.
It's very important work that's ignored. It's a big blind spot.
I find it really funny. So I love my sleep, and I tell people like I like a good 8 to 10 hours of sleep if I can get it. And most people are a bit horrified, like, what? Like,
Yeah.
really? Like, I try not to wake up with my alarm. I can have the habit of wanting to stay up, but that's not really what my body wants to do.
Yeah.
So but it's been a while of letting go of the messages from society of like, you need 6 hours. Well, you don't want to see me at 6 hours.
Right. No. And that's what we're seeing. What we're dealing with is people on 6 hours of sleep. No wonder we're all fighting and not getting along and clashing and misunderstanding each other and having accidents. I mean, 6 hours, I think, is the average. And the recommended hours, this is Ayurveda and modern science both say the same thing, which is 7 to 9 hours a night is the recommendation. And we have in our culture, it's like sleep deficit pride. People are like, I only need 5 hours. Like, no, actually, biologically, you need 7 to 9.
I mean, as a new mom, when my babies were little, like talk about sleep deprivation. It was brutal. I just remember walking around like not really knowing how I was going to get through the day. And so, yeah, I enjoy my sleep now. I brag about it. And if people are like, I got up at blah, 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 whatever time, I like to tell them, well, I got 10 hours of sleep.
And that's why I'm being a nice person right now. Yeah. I mean, it's not lost on me that I started developing more programs on rejuvenation and deep rest and deep nurturance and yoga nidra as I was having, babies. I was experiencing sleep deprivation and depletion for sure. So yeah, it's a great thing actually for parents because there are times when we have to lack sleep. For example, there are shift workers, and then there are people that are doing baby shifts, people that have newborns or pregnant mamas that aren't sleeping well. at night. Of course, we have Ayurvedic remedies for that. But Yoga Nidra is a wonderful way to actually redress the deep rest that's lost if we are in a situation where we're lacking nighttime, consistent, long nighttime sleep.
Maybe I'll send this to my son then. He's 21. He's working shift work.
Oh, yes.
He'll love it. He comes home. He's like, Mom, do that voodoo, whatever yoga stuff
Right.
you do. My neck is sore. So he knows it helps. He does think his mom is a bit off the deep end.
That's funny and sweet.
Is there anything that you wish that yoga teachers knew about Yoga Nidra?
Just that, what we've said, that it's just so much more than rest, recovery, and relaxation, though all of those things are really, really good. That it's a very, Yoga Nidra can be a very sacred opportunity to help people resolve, old patterns that are getting in their way, that are causing inner disturbance, that are blocking them from being, the absolute best that they can be, and living up to their own potential and being happy. That's a really amazing opportunity with Yoga Nidra. And so I think, if teachers love that part of teaching, love getting their students into Shavasana and putting blankets over them and offering eye pillows, and they're drawn to that there may be even more than they realize that they could offer.
So also one last clarification. So it sounds like we could get people into Shavasana and then they can reach this state in that. Is that right? Am I hearing that
Yeah,
right?
we get them in Shavasana. And then, generally, Yoga Nidra, part of the technology is the body position. It could be Shavasana. I also do teach teachers how to do, alternatives to lying down on the floor on the back, because there are other, there are circumstances where we need to make Shavasana accessible in a different way. But yes, there's first handling the body so it can relax, but then there's actually using language in a relatively specific way, though there's wiggle room. That's why I'm able to teach teachers to write their own script. But we're using the power of sound through language to actually make people's minds kind of available for that inner experience. So there's a talking people through a process.
Right. Okay. Well, I can't wait to hear from our connected yoga teacher listeners, because I just feel like we've kind of cracked the door open and they might have a lot more questions for you. And so if they want to find out more or sign up for your course or in-person training or find those recordings, where do they find you?
Yeah, so they can go to yogawithkaya.com, all spelled out. And then for the training, they can click to online programs and find my program. It's called The Nectar of Nidra, the Nectar of Sleep, and sign up for that. And then if they want to just experience the recordings, a couple of them, then they can go to the homepage of my website and scroll down and look for the little form saying, I think it says something like, yes, I want Yoga Nidra recordings.
This is fascinating. Thank you so much for all of this information. I've learned a lot and I'm excited. I'm going to do it later on this afternoon. It'll be my treat.
I will too. Thanks for having me, Shannon. It's been really lovely.
Connected yoga teachers, how was that? What was your key takeaway? What did you learn from today's episode? I know one of my key takeaways was the pronunciation of Yoga Nidra. So I'm going to work on it. It still comes out as Yoga Nidra. Sorry, Kaya, sometimes. And I think this is something that I can look at, practice. Doing this intro and outro has really helped me to practice this for sure. I think this is also something that we can look at in yoga. What if we examine something, look at the origin of it, take a new perspective on it, hear someone else's perspective, and try it out and see how it fits. There are so many times that we can do this as yoga professionals. I also want to say a huge thank you to Kaya for coming on the podcast and really sharing so much knowledge, wisdom, also the coupon code gift that she's given to all of us. So if you're looking for that, it's in the show notes. If you are thinking about taking Kaya's Nectar of Nidra course, you can use this discount code connected with a capital C, yoga with capital Y, 20 as 20. So connected yoga 20, capital C, capital Y, no spaces. That's the discount code that you can use. I also want to thank Kaya for being really involved in our Connected Yoga Teacher group. She is in there helping a lot, and I tag her anytime that there's something to do with spelling or pronunciation in our Facebook group. Anything to do with Sanskrit, feel free to tag Kaya in there. Before I sign off, I want to ask you, do you want to hang out in person? We could hang out together at the Toronto Yoga Show and Conference, April 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of 2020. I will be presenting on the Friday night, and Amanda and I will be talking about how to fill your yoga classes. So if you're feeling like you need more people in your group classes or more people signing up for your one-on-one sessions, that talk is for you. It'll be 2 hours. It'll be packed. I am so excited about it. Also in September, on the 19th and 20th over the weekend in Meaford, Ontario, I'm teaching Yoga for Pelvic Health. This is a 20-hour training that will enable you to bring Yoga for Pelvic Health into your community, either into your existing classes, in a class series, or in a workshop. And if we can't hang out in person, we could hang out in a consultation call. You can see how to book that or how to attend any of my events on the connectedyogateacher.com. Thank you so much to our team over here at the Connected Yoga Teacher, Suzanne, Crunch, Nick, and Sinead. You make me smile, you make me laugh, and you just make the work so much easier over here. Also, huge gratitude to you, Connected Yoga Teacher listener. This podcast exists because of you. You are out there doing the amazing work in your community, and I just want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?